Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week as I answer your questions and share stories about this week's trait. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault. All right, welcome back. Welcome to the weekend. It's Friday. Off the Hinges, back inside the vault. I'm really excited for today. This man, my man, Myles Kerr. I haven't talked to this guy. We keep in touch with text messages and we stay in touch pretty sporadically, but I'd say relatively frequently for us. But however, this man is insanely busy. He is a gunny. In my mind, he's like the gunny. He's one of the top dogs right now in the Marine Corps with a fascinating rank in an amazing unit, doing some great stuff. So, yep, he's a Marine. I'm a Marine. The typical disclaimer up front. Nothing that we dive into today is endorsed by or supported by the USMC, the Department of Defense. Well, I wouldn't say it's supported by. They probably support us talking about good stuff. But it's not being advocated for, endorsed by our organization or the military at large. But this guy, before I hand it over to him to briefly introduce himself, and then we jump into some great questions, we're talking about problem solving. And there's so many people I could turn to dive into this topic, but I trust this guy explicitly. Because we can rewind the game tape back quite a few years. When he was a young NCO, I was a pretty fresh lieutenant, platoon commander in 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines. And just my experience watching this guy solve problems and trusting him with some hard problems, deploying with him, having him as one of my rock star leaders, and now the things he's doing. So I've just watched his growth as a Marine, which is fantastic. But above all these accolades, which he definitely deserves, I think I'm most proud of him for just being a fantastic husband, father, and friend to everyone he meets. And of course, he's a great leader and a great Marine. But as a man, he's above reproach in my mind. He's a fantastic man, an incredible human. So, man, I could go on and on and on. So we'll dive into some things. But before I get carried away, let me hand the mic over to my man, Myles. I'm going to take a sip. Introduce yourself to our listeners, please.
Like Josh said, my name is Myles. I joined the Marine Corps in 2012. First duty station was in 2-1, did 6 years there. Transferred over to 3-5, did 2 years with 3-5. Then I got orders to be a part of the Army for a couple of years, being the Marine Corps liaison for the Army's Infantry Mortar Leaders Course. And then after that, I got orders to SOI West, where I'm currently a combat instructor at the School of Infantry. My first gig at SOI, I was the staff NCOIC for the Advanced Mortar Leader course for AMC, and then there she is.
What's up, girl?
Say hi.
Hi.
They just got done painting.
Awesome.
And now I'm the staff NCOIC for Infantry Unit Leaders course. But yeah, that is me in a nutshell. At least my journey as a Marine. I got 2 wild girls that keep me entertained. I have a beautiful wife, Paige, who's currently on a cruise. So we're kicking the dad life with the kids, trying to keep them occupied.
I love it, man. This is good. Well, problem solving might be real time as he manages handling this podcast into he's a girl dad. And I know what that means. I got one more than you, but it doesn't mean it's any more or less cumbersome, dutiful. Yeah. Proud of you, man. It's good stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of just so many areas that our paths have crossed and so many rock star guys who, when I was out at the Unit Leaders Training Company and all the guys who were at IULC, for the non-Marines, we will do our best not to use the Marine Corps jargon and all this crazy talk. If we use it, we'll try to rope you in so you know what we're talking about. But also, let me calm down all the quote unquote snipers out there. I've already talked to this guy. He's Myles. I'm Josh for this. This isn't a Marine Corps affiliated thing. We're really good friends. We're really good brothers. I mean, we've sort of grown our kids up in church a little bit together when we were both West Coast, so we have a tight bond. So don't come sniping for him. Get out the bush, put your guns away. We're fine. Calm down. It's easy. He's a gunny. I'm a major. I probably need to be saluting him anyway. It's all good. But I'm so proud of this guy because the course he's at, it has a huge impact on developing the young platoon sergeants, the young leaders, young staff NCOs. And before we dive into questions, man, I gotta brag on you a little bit, man. So like this guy was, when he was at 2-1 with me, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, very storied battalion. I had transitioned from my first platoon, which was in Ghost Company, Golf Company, is the weapons platoon commander. Then I went over to the 81s platoon, which was Hitman. And so in Hitman, Myles was my, what we call an adjust gun squad leader. he's basically your best squad leader. One of your best NCOs is holding that down. So he was with the section I was with. We went on a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And then we were the vertical trap, which is tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. At the time, it was Colonel Henderson, who is now General Henderson. So just fantastic leadership that was under then Lieutenant Colonel Smith, who is our battalion commander, who's now Colonel Smith. Just some fantastic leaders. But when I look back at like the rock star team that we had with Gunsmoke 2-1, Myles and some of his cadre of NCOs that we were really blessed to have in Hitman, whether you look at Josh Coop, you could spread that net pretty wide. And we had some really fantastic leaders. And I would say Myles was running at the front of an incredibly strong pack of guys. And then you fast forward a little bit to the schoolhouse that he's now a staff NCOIC, so a staff non-commissioned officer in charge of unit leaders course. And he came through that course when I was the company commander. He came through that as a sergeant. And not only did he crush the course, he was the honor grad of the course with staff sergeants and gunnies there. So when it comes to infantry and tactics and just being a practitioner and being actually able to solve difficult problems mentally, physically, spiritually, there's a lot of theorists, a lot of maybe behavioral scientists or senior officers I could bring on to talk about this topic. But I've watched this guy live it and do it and practice it day in and day out. He does it as a husband, a father, a fantastic Marine. So there's a reason he's on here. You need to perk up, listen up, and hopefully you can tune in for a little bit. This is going to be good. But I have my staples of the diet. I'm going to come off the top with them. Number one, what are you thankful for this week?
I would say this week particularly, I am very thankful for my wife and daughters. This has been an eye-opening experience being at home alone with the kids. Always her time with her girlfriend on a cruise. It's really opened my eyes to everything that she's dealing with and she's going through. Not to mention she manages and coaches at F45 in San Clemente. So she runs that, and she just got a job as a teacher assistant at the kids' school for Stony Brook Christian School. So
rock on.
She's just juggling so many things, keeping these kids living and breathing and watching them grow. And so I'm very thankful for her for sure.
That's awesome. Man, as a girl dad, I'll tell you what, sometimes when I come home, I'm like, oh, the kids are still alive. They haven't murdered each other and they're sweethearts. But I'm like, the wives are a rock star, man. You nail it. Good job, Paige.
Yeah.
Paige is crushing it. Cool. What have you been learning lately?
I would say, given my job, what I'm currently doing, I am forever learning. There's so much that I learn every single week. Every different class that we have, a different student comes in and we just explore a different avenue that I haven't really thought about, whether it be infantry related or just a life in the pursuit of happiness. There's just so much that I'm constantly learning. It's phenomenal. Sometimes exhausting because it's all right, back to the books. I thought I knew this thing. Actually, I didn't. Let's reapproach it from a different lens. So,
yeah, man. And you guys, we had rockstar NCOs around us, but you guys have a pretty rockstar cadre out there. Guys that I know from 2-7, Evan Ouellette, who moved on to be a gunner, and Brandon Campbell. And I know Zeus Arenas, who just, that guy crushes BJJ stuff, by the way. On a side note, Zeus is a maniac. Zeus, you're a freak. Please don't ever get mad at me and try to fight me because you would probably kill me. And Omana, just so many good guys that through the infantry, all roads for good NCOs lead, I guess, in some extent to combat instructor. And those guys at Unit Leaders Training Company were just fantastic. So, man, yeah, you're in good company. And again, no shock. This guy's running at the front of a very strong pack of guys. Number 3, how do you hope to grow and transform as you find time for rest and reflection? And maybe rest is funny and comical right now because you have little girls and your staff NCOIC of a crazy busy course where you're always doing stuff. But if you do get to rest, how do you try to focus on that?
I have this weird thing where I constantly try to find hard things to do. So I think right now my rest and refit is I'm doing a lot of exercise and a lot of running. Just trying to prepare myself mentally for that 50K that I'm about to do here in November.
That's wild. Didn't you just smoke at High Rocks, by the way?
Yeah, I did. My wife got me a High Rocks ticket in Vegas for my 31st birthday back in January. So nice. I did that. Wasn't too stoked about my time, but I guess my time was pretty good. So
you did all right.
I'll take it as a win.
So tell us all, what's your story? If you were to give a story of Myles to the listeners and give a little bit of a backdrop of who you are, what would that be?
I'd say first and foremost, I was born and raised in Charlottesville, Michigan. It's a small town, the pinky of the mitten, if you will. I was the typical rebel without a cause, always finding myself in all sorts of trouble. Never really cared too much about my grades. I was always hyper fixated on like all of the different types of sports. I grew up playing baseball, basketball, wrestling, football. I played soccer for 1 year until I was old enough to start football. Uh, I just kind of had my hands in every sport. Athletics was like the first kind of experience I had for teamwork and working as like a cohesive unit. So I think a lot of that had to do with like me finding like the niche in the infantry community. Got in a little bit of trouble right out of high school, joined the Marine Corps. And like I said earlier, I've been in the infantry my whole career, worked with the Army for a little bit. That was, a phenomenal experience. Not too fond of Columbus, Georgia, but like the billet itself, being able to network with a different service. I worked right next to the individuals who like wrote mortar doctrine. So like I had a heavy hand on what that looked like, everything that was coming out for the future of the mortar community. I got to play with, put my 2 cents into. So like there was a lot of cool things that I got to do there. And then, coming back to the School of Infantry, taking that knowledge and that experience and sharing it with the Advanced Mortarman's course. And then now here at Infantry Unit Leaders course.
What's some stuff that you picked up from the Army, maybe for our Marine listeners that I'm sure will dial in and listen, that you would want to drop off on them if they haven't come through your courses before, really engage with you? Like, what's something that you picked up that really opened your eyes, I guess, from seeing behind the Army curtain of what they do with field manuals, technical manuals, how much they actually dump into the weapons community and stuff? Did you pick anything up from that side?
Yeah, I would say they are very technical with their doctrine. So what I mean by that is I'll use like the Fire Direction Center procedures that they do all this math and wizardry to get the data to put on their mortar systems. They are very technical with the science behind that. But what I realized is like compared to our version of that course, Advanced Mortarman's course for the Marine Corps, is like we are very art driven. And although like we are very good with the technical side of it, we do a lot of things with like mortar employment, getting the guys out to the field, applying what they're learning through the doctrine. They really only focused on what the doctrine said and didn't take it any further than that. So that was probably the biggest thing that I learned about them. Got to work with the 75th Ranger Regiment a lot. We had 2 liaisons. We had a SOCOM liaison, and then we had a Marine Corps liaison. The Special Operations Command liaison that we had was from 75th, and phenomenal individuals. Probably have like by far the best mortar platoons. That's saying a lot. I pride myself in a lot of the mortar platoons that I've come up in, but they are just, true professionals, a bunch of pipe hitters, and they have the ability to, get rid of guys who don't belong in that community. So, shout out to them. But yeah, I had a lot of great experiences with the Army. I would say by far that the technical side of the doctrine is where I would say that they are better than us, but maybe they pay more attention to.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's good. I think it's good for young Marines. Maybe the older you get, hopefully you knock off some of the edges. You're still going to have the inter-service rivalries, but I think once you mature a little bit, you grow up and go, hey, everybody brings something to the table. So I'd encourage younger Marines, if you get opportunities like what Myles did to branch out of the Marine Corps, go do something that's joint, or just maybe even with another service or something, take that opportunity, because it's a cool chance for you to get exposed and get some experience in something that's different. I think it helps you appreciate where you come from and appreciate the goodness, but also pick up some nuggets along the ways. This next question comes from actually my last guest that I had on here, and her name is Michelle. So I talked about empathy with her. She was one of the Army trauma nurses when I was in Germany at the hospital back in 2005. And she truly is a hero to me, man. And she's out of the Army now, but just a dear friend. And before I give you the question, is she's always interested now as a nurse practitioner and talking with younger nurses or younger professionals in the military or working with the VA who she's with, maybe a younger generation from when she came in, because she was also a prior enlisted NCO. So she came in the late 90s into the Army. And she said, I'm always intrigued by staying current in how I train, educate, develop, lead a younger generation, because there is new technologies, new ways of thinking, new ways of learning and adapting. So that's sort of the framework of her desire behind asking this question. And she asked, what is the biggest challenge you have teaching young Marines, and how do you navigate that, especially from this lens of problem solving?
I would say, first and foremost, like the most challenging thing for me is just to kind of give some background to like my target population for like the students that I'm teaching is like vast majority of them are like the same age as me. There's a wide spread of young sergeants, and we get those every now and again, just like it was when I came through. Like we have guys coming through who've been in the Marine Corps, longer than I have. So when trying to think about it from that dynamic, it's like, how do I stay relevant? And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like reading different publications, technical manuals, like what does the doctrine say? And then encompassing all of that through my experiences. I would say that's definitely the most challenging part of it all. Because ultimately, like, step one is know your target audience. Like, be humble enough to know that although, like, yes, I have the instructor billet, like, I'm probably not the smartest man in the room. I have a lot of experience and I have a lot of knowledge that I can portray to you as the student, but like, I could probably learn something through you too. And I try to take that approach through every class that I teach. Because, every class is different regardless of what the topic is. There's so much different experiences out there. And I think just understanding that like we can take everything from the student population and learn something from them as well is how I try to approach things.
Yeah. I can answer this side for Michelle watching this guy too and knowing the course you're in. What I can say is it would probably be exponentially harder for you if you didn't stay in peak physical condition. And I mean that sincerely, because if you're running a course like what Myles is running, you can't be a chump, and you have to not only be able to hang, but you have to be able to outperform. And I'm not saying that there's not guys that come through who can outperform you, or that, you're fitter than every student that comes through, but the level of stamina, endurance, physically and mentally, and I'd say spiritually as well, emotionally, just staying even keeled and on the leading edge of everything that's happening, not just from an academic standpoint, but being able to grind at both ends of the candle and lead these courses through and then churn and do it, spin on a heel, do it again, cycle after cycle, and stay on your game. There's not much space, even without a family, even if you're a single guy running that game. It's very difficult. So yeah, reading, you have to stay up on it. But I'd just say I've seen this with you, and I've seen it with a lot of those instructors and the guys I know, but specifically your balance in that is incredible, man. It really is. And it's not an easy feat. So I would also just add into that for Michelle, knowing Myles, sure, it's challenging, but it's a lot less challenging than it probably could be if he didn't keep himself really dialed in mentally, physically, spiritually. Because you tipped on the mental, which I definitely agree with that side, but I'd say it goes a whole lot deeper and broader than that, especially the role you're in. But also the humble brag from Myles. Yeah, a lot of the students younger in rank that are his age or older, this guy just crushed it. He made it to Gunny incredibly fast. He's been crushing everything he does. I think you nailed it. Some of it comes to exposure and experience. And while they have their own, I would say you and the cadre there are in that position because you bring something to the table, not from a position of being superior, but I love the way you frame that. Yep, I might have the billet of instructor, but knowing you guys and knowing the Brandons and the Evans and the rest of the team that I've known out there, you guys do approach it like, hey, what can I learn from you? When you're stepping into a course as a student, which is really difficult, it's nice to have instructors like that. I think back to the guys like Dave Densley, Matt Ingerson, some rock stars back when I was there who are now like moving on. Matt just picked up Sergeant Major recently. So like guys that come from that course, it's cream of the crop in Marine Corps infantry is the IULC instructor cadre. That really hasn't changed as long as I've known it. So, I mean, hats off to you, man, because I know it's challenging to keep yourself sharp. And I know it is a thankless grind that probably not a lot of people outside of your family or your close cadre members really see. But I know it takes a beating on you, man. So I'm proud of you.
you want to talk about problem solving. When do I find time to fit all of this stuff in, right?
It's real though. Like, how do you, honestly, like, how do you do that? I think that gets at her question. Like, what do you do with that?
A lot of the times, it's early wake ups. I'm going for a run or going to the gym. I'm doing it before, probably around 5, well before 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually at work around 6:30, and some nights I don't get home until after the kids are already in bed. Then it's just a
Yeah.
rinse and repeat. So you have to make time for things that you value as important. And I've always viewed physical fitness as one of those things. We have the data to show if students are coming to the course already in, I wouldn't say great, good physical fitness, they are 90%, I would say maybe 95% more capable of doing better on their field leadership evaluation throughout the course. Physical fitness has so much to do with everything that we do in the infantry. I had, thankful for me, like I grew up with that in sports, and wrestling was kind of the thing that I prided myself in, and I did a lot of running through that sport, and I've kind of just kept through it through my military service. That is also how I unwind too, right? Like, talk about like self-care. I don't like running by any
Yeah,
means,
man.
but because I know it's good for me, and that is probably the only time that like I get time to myself to really reflect on everything that's going around. So yeah.
It's good stuff, man. All right. So next question for you. We've already hit on it some. You've taught Marines. You've raised and continue to raise daughters. Two very different mission sets. And both of those are laced with uncertainty, emotion. So with all of that in mind, when you're navigating these complex situations in either space, how do you decide whether problems that you're faced with are just like maybe tactical or surface level, easy problems to solve, or it's really something deeper beneath the surface? And how do you approach that?
I would say, like, step one with anything, whether it's military or the kiddos, just like assess the problem. And I know you kind of you gave a short story about you and one of your girls. Looks like a math problem, right?
Yeah.
There's so many times where I think that a problem has arose that might be very small in nature, but then without really assessing it, I don't really understand the true dynamic of what that problem is. There's been so many times where like something's happening with the kids, and I'm just like, why can't we all come to a common solution? Like, go back to the onion, and it's like, okay, well, how much sleep do they get? Is that a factor in it? There's just so many things when you peel back the onion that you uncover that makes you kind of you have to take a different approach to find a different solution. Might not have been the first one that you had in mind. Yeah, I mean, it's step one is always assess the problem at hand, and then like you have to be able to have flexibility and try to find different solutions based on whatever that problem at hand is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this question because it's when it's talking about dealing with Marines or dealing with your daughters, it's dealing with people. So it's more than just yourself. And problems with yourself can be difficult. But also, I think part of peeling back that onion, whether it's with yourself, an individual problem, or a team problem or a family problem, so much of it in my mind has to deal with how vulnerable and open are those people honestly with you about what they perceive as the problem. Like you said, like you might not view it as this thing, but your daughter might view it radically different, which makes total sense. And I experience that all the time. And it's hard, I think, as her father or as a leader to try and put myself back in the shoes, or even if I've never walked in those shoes before, to try and appreciate maybe from what Michelle and I were talking about our last episode on empathy, to really appreciate what someone is feeling and going through and listen as a leader. That plays so nicely into solving problems. If you don't have the empathy to press in and understand, it's really hard as a leader or as a father to help solve a problem. Like you become more of a blockade and a barrier.
Yeah,
And so it's crazy.
sometimes the solution to the problem is just listening, right? Like, you might not have to say anything as a response. There's been so many times where I've had Marines approach me and like they're like, "Hey, I have X, Y, or Z," and I'm like, "All right, like lay it on me," and like just allowing them to open up or be vulnerable for a split, like just show that you truly care about them as an individual. That has been enough. They're like, "All right, well, you know, I'm good now. That's all I truly needed."
And it's so funny, man, because if I was to rewind in my mind, talks that I would have around tables with, so Matt Ingerson, such a good buddy of mine, a sergeant major now, but he was the chief instructor at IULC. He was a former scout sniper. Just love that guy to death. And we would sit there with some students coming through. And at the time, I would imagine it's still probably similar, but at the time with the coursework that we had, the most difficult part of unit leader course was when guys went through the fires package. It crushed some guys if they didn't have any experience with doing like fires and integration and blah, blah, blah. And for guys like me and Matt, that wasn't difficult. We'd sort of grown up around that and it was sort of our forte. So it was nice to be able to help out. But I noticed so much that there were times where, again, the reason I say transparency and helping people, if you're in a position where you're dealing with a problem and then you're a leader approaching that, Matt was really good about trying to draw them in, identify these issues early because he could sort of see these repeat offenders and, he'd smell what they were stepping in. Be like, hey, I'm not going to force you or, like waterboard you into seeking help, but we're here for you. But the guys that would show up and say, hey, can we just sit down and talk? Much like with my daughter, sometimes you nail it. Sometimes they would just start talking and you'd be closed mouth and open ears and they wouldn't even get halfway into it. And they'd go like, I know what I did now. And my daughters do that all the time. Like my oldest especially be like, oh, it's okay now, Dad. She just wanted Dad to listen. And that's hard not to step in and fix a problem before I even have assessed what's up. And I love the way you say that. Just like sometimes just shut up, man. Just listen. And they might stumble onto their own solutions just because you're there with them. And that's very powerful.
Had that happen numerous times with even staff sergeants who are like, this is the problem at hand. And I'm like, all right, you tell me about it. And as they're like walking through the steps or the procedures that they did, there's like, I'm good now. And they like walk away. They found the solution all by themselves. Like, okay, I'm here to help.
Yeah, and it's not always that simple. It's lovely when it is, but there is something to be said for being that type of person. Maybe it's not even you're in a leadership position. Maybe you're a teammate, or maybe you're a subordinate that's helping solve a problem. Like listening is always a good posture because if it's not a life or death, you need to immediately act now. It's not all melodramatic when it comes to problem solving. Sometimes a little patience goes a long way with actually doing the right thing. What do you do when you come across a situation that is unprecedented? So you don't really have a reference point or any personal experience with that. Because like in my mind, we might say problem solving, but I would say the more you see the same type of problems, the less they become really problems to you. More like, let's use the simple example of a math equation, right? When I'm young, maybe division was difficult, like what I was helping Aria with when I framed it. But then you get older and you're like, I've seen this before. I know the process on how to solve this. But life doesn't always hit you with that. So if it's unprecedented, and then also maybe expectations have gone unmet. So then your problem is bigger than yourself, or it falls outside of the scope of what you have in your own toolkit. What do you do then?
I really like this question. I try to put a lot of thought into this. Step one, always assess the problem at hand. If it's something that I haven't seen before, I would say more than likely I'm going to try to focus on the things that I can affect. If I know it's truly outside of my realm or my scope, then I definitely seek support, whether that be laterally through my peers, upward to those above me, or sometimes a lot of times we try to take away a lot of credit from junior Marines as well. But like, these kids coming in nowadays are so smart with a lot of things that we just didn't come up in the Marine Corps with. Sometimes when you're seeking support, it might go down towards them as well. Definitely try to remain flexible. I think that's probably the most important part about being a leader, being flexible, and that's where you truly have the ability to grow. If it's maybe not a problem that you're used to or you haven't seen before, doesn't mean you can't find a solution to it. You just have to think outside of the box or do something that you might not be as comfortable with doing. And then ultimately, like trying to find realistic goals. So like what what is the end state, or what am I trying to do with this problem?
All right, Myles got attacked by gremlins, but you won't see that part. He's free now. He's in the clear. Back to you.
But yeah, just the realistic goals is just like, what am I trying to achieve here? And then ultimately, the last thing that I always try to do, especially when I'm dealt with things that I've never seen before, I haven't experienced, is like, okay, now that I've seen that thing, let's reflect on it. How did we come to the outcome, or how did we get to the outcome that we got to? What can I truly learn from that? If I were to do it again, is there anything that I would change? Yeah, and that's how I try to approach things.
So when you said you reach out to your support structure, whether it's, to peers or maybe seniors or subordinates or wherever it is in your organizational chain, as soon as you said reaching down to someone who might be a subordinate in the chain, it made me think of when we were together up north. Do you remember when we were at Fort Hunter Liggett doing our, what we call a RUMUX, so realistic urban training, but they sent us up there as a vertical trap, and we did a lot of stuff to train for that. During that time, my mind immediately flashed back. This is a good story about Myles and how his whole hey, reach out to support structure, and sometimes it's to your subordinates or people that are positioned underneath you. I was his platoon commander with 81s. And so, yeah, I already told you he was the Just Gun squad leader, but for trap, he was my recovery team leader. So basically your patrol lead, if you will, for trap stuff. So I'm not going to bore you with military stuff for those that aren't in it, but just know it was a really important position. And what we did is we said, hey, for what we want to do, we want to be able to do our job nighttime conditions. So we did reverse cycle training. Everything we did at night, because if we could do it at night, whether it's with NVGs, night vision goggles, whatever on, we said, if we can do all of these difficult tasks of finding a down pilot or a down personnel or whatever, navigate through thick vegetation to whatever spot, if we can do that as a small unit together at nighttime, well, the daylight's just going to make it easier. So let's do that. So we actually tried to put our money where our mouth is as infantry guys and do that. So I said, all right, let's do some reverse cycle training and then tell the guys that we're going to let them get some sleep. But we really, from a problem solving perspective, we had already smoke checked these guys for quite a few days. And we were right there with them. We were all exhausted, but I said, let's make them run drills when they're exhausted, when they aren't expecting to be woken up. I didn't lie to them, but we held some things we were going to do from them. Let's just say that. Even the other NCOs didn't. So we wake them up at an ungodly hour, basically when they were all just sawing logs, sleeping. And so we get them up and we're like, we're going to go run drills. And man, right off the bat, they were already pissed. I remember this. And do you remember when we started running drills through the woods and it broke out into an all-out fist fight between a couple of them? There was Josh was one of the guys, and he wasn't the instigator. There were a couple other dudes, and it was all I heard was this complete scuffle, and I was like, oh man, that's fists hitting faces type deal.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Man, and I tell you, and it wasn't a huge problem, but here's the deal. As a leader, I looked at Lenny because Lenny was like, I don't know, sir, maybe we should break it up. And I remember turning to Myles, and not that I disrespected the gunny at the time's input, but I turned to the NCO because I was like, hey, if this is a problem within this core group of people, I want to reach out to one of the leaders in that core team of who they respect and say, what should we do here? Not just assume what I should do. And he said, let them go. He said, let them have it out a little bit. We'll make sure that they don't kill each other. They're not going to do anything like that. But he's like, let them get out of their system. They're frustrated. He said, and this was Myles at the time. Again, we promoted him to sergeant on the MU, but he was a corporal. And he said, as a very experienced young corporal, he goes, just let them duke it out a little bit, sir. Then we're going to pull everybody in and we're going to talk to them about what happened. And we did. And so I let the NCOs run it, and the good NCOs like Myles and then, the section leader and everything, we pulled them in, we talked to them and, had a good kneecap to kneecap, if you will. And guys are all jacked up. And then of course I had to turn to the company commander and backfill him on hey, when you see guys with busted up faces tomorrow, hey, just know this is what happened. And I let my NCOs handle it. But I'll tell you what, man, coming out of that wasn't what I would have done with it. I would have been hey, let's just knock this off. And it wasn't some macho false bravado from you. You just appreciated that they needed to get this out of their system so you could actually bring it full circle. And then you knew that was going to gel the guys even tighter. And it really did. So I think that popped in my mind as soon as you said, reach out to a subordinate. And with this mindset of, solving these problems that you haven't dealt with before, because I hadn't dealt with that before, with that unit, with that team. And I didn't know exactly how to navigate it. So you've got to press into people who are a part of that culture, who actually can understand and speak a language that maybe you can't at that time, regardless of what you've done in the past. And so that just stood out to me of like, instead of talking in theory, that's very practically ways that I've seen you apply that and give good advice and step in. And it actually, in my mind, was the right call. And it was sort of funny to see those guys all jacked up for the next few days. So,
Yeah. I think it's funny too, because like maybe it's just me, but like as a leader, we tried to think that uh, we're still young, we're still a part of like that. I don't want to say generation, like putting a specific title to it, but like we're still relevant, if you will.
yeah.
There's so many times like I hear a younger Marine speaking, and I'm just like, all right, newsflash, what they're saying makes no sense to me. Yeah, I think it's funny how we just time and time again. It's like, I'm still as young as I was, when I was a young corporal. Like Paige and I talking about all the time. It's like, are we old? It's like, how is that viewed through the lens of a younger Marine? I mean, time and time again, like as a young leader, it's like I felt like I had so many great ideas, or just things that I could have shared that, there was certain leaders that were above me that didn't really care about what my opinions were of the shut up and color approach, if you will. And now I try to take, okay, well, here's how I felt during that. Let me try to spin that same viewpoint back at my younger Marines and get their input. Because I'm not as relevant as I think I am. Maybe they do have some great opinions and thoughts of their own.
Man, it was so funny when I was at 2-7 with my rifle company. It was with golf company there as well. And I remember there was something that the staff NCOs needed to give all the guys for a formation, and they couldn't get a hold of some of the junior Marines. They knew that they're all finishing up, whether it was weapons maintenance coming out of the field, maybe some have already gone back to the barracks to put some of their gear away, whatever. And I remember that the first sergeant and the gunny, the company ops chief, were getting a little frustrated with, man, we can't get a hold of these. One of the NCOs goes, what did you do? Well, so-and-so like sent messages, tried to call their phone. And he goes, I got you. He's like, I'm going to send him a Instagram message. I'm like, get out of here. He's got his phone on him and he's ignoring texts. He's like, they don't answer their texts. He sent him an Instagram message and this guy's like messaging him back and forth with these. Oh yeah, he's getting all the Marines. They'll be here in just a few minutes. And thankfully it was a smart and a good first sergeant gunny. They didn't get mad. They're just like, that's crazy that we're all sitting here trying to like text message, phone call, and on the same device, you went this other way to solve the problem. And it was exactly what you need to do, because you're like, these guys have their text messages turned off because they get annoyed, but they have their Instagram on because all of the girls they're talking to are sending them messages there. So if you want them, you use that platform. And I was like, it was so simple. But to us, when you talk about relevance, we're just like, that's wild, dude. But it was true. And it's so funny how, I guess, culturally, you do think I have the answer. And if you don't really know how that culture lives and breathes and the ecosystem in it, your solution to that problem might be way off the mark, man. All right. So problem solving, yeah, we've already talked about how it looks different, whether you're operating as an individual, team member, a leader. But can you think of a time and share it when, in your role specifically as a leader, a real breakthrough didn't come from solving the problem, maybe the textbook right way, but from reframing it, like you've already said a little bit, from like getting a more shared understanding? And specifically in you, maybe what shifted in you and the team and in the outcome when you took a different approach, when you saw it differently?
I don't know if I really have an example to give. I would say with my current billet, one thing that I've learned when trying to present all of the different types of information to a target audience is like we're trying to get away from like, the death by PowerPoint mentality of like just sit down and retain the information. So like with that being in mind, trying to learn or teach based off of different ideas, whether it be small breakout groups. So there's one thing that I do. I'll give an example. There's like 2 chapters of the specific reference that I try to teach into when I get into the mortar package for infantry unit leaders course. And instead of just pulling the reference up and reading a line by line for the chapter, I'll break the students up into groups, and then I'll have them I'll give them 30 minutes. They'll read whatever portion that they get assigned, and they have to do a teach back to the class. The problem at hand is how do I get 50 staff NCOs to retain this information without just shotgunning the information down their throat and expecting them to retain it, because it's just not realistic. And then, okay, well, what's the best way that I learned coming up in the Marine Corps? I was I learned through my peers, or from my peers. So why not give them the ability to teach the information? I mean, tremendous input when you give an individual that responsibility, and how much different experiences that they have that they could bring to the table that I might not have been able to. And you see the end state of all of that is, we'll call it 50 individuals coming away from that experience with a lot more knowledge or understanding of the original problem that was at hand.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's so true. Sure, the learning models, all those frameworks, which I could totally geek out on it with you, and I love those sorts of things. But simply, I think since we're both girl dads, that model in my mind just sort of flashes back to when I'm actually trying to get my girls to learn something for life, like a life skill, or this child needs to learn this thing. They have to learn by doing. And so I don't understand why we as leaders or professionals think that we can just, like you said, shotgun blast or waterboard people with information they don't even know yet. And because maybe we know it loosely, hopefully decently at times, we think, oh, well, why can't you just get this? Well, appreciate how long it took you at first. And also, sometimes adults are just grown kids still. There's still a way that we learn as people, and you need to appreciate letting them get into it, wrestle with the problem on their own in small groups, the same way that you need to let your kid be clumsy and awkward with something with no fear of failing there. Give them the space to just be human with it. And then, encourage them a little bit, even if they sucked at it. Just be like, hey, I'm proud of you for trying. Good job. Yeah, we're here for you. It'll take time for you, maybe a little bit more. Maybe we need to circle back around to that breakout again. But we approach it with such a draconian mindset of just God, do this. Memorize it all. You're a professional. Get it. It's man, that doesn't work. And it is getting groups of adults to humble themselves enough to want to learn something new is difficult because of all the egos and the bias that get in that sort of environment anyway, to be honest. But setting that framework as a leader is a huge problem. That's a great example, because then how do you model the right way for not only for them to learn, but I'm a real believer in this, man. What you guys do at courses, professional military courses like this, you're setting everything as an example of how they should then turn and maybe use your framework to teach their platoons. So that's maybe even weightier than whether that staff sergeant becomes an 0369 leader on the back end. I would hope so, sure. But what can they draw away from you that's actually useful to teach their platoons and make very lethal, effective, intelligent, young infantry Marines? So that's probably the bigger problem set that you're faced with. And that's a great way to frame it. So y'all better be listening up to Myles. He's throwing some gold at you. You better tuck that away. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
So reflecting on your experience, because you do have a lot of it personally, and maybe while mentoring younger staff NCOs or even dealing family with yourself, we touched on it a little bit just here, but blind spots. So what blind spots have you noticed most when Marines are under pressure? And I think that's different. Problem solving in a steady state environment can be difficult enough.
Yeah.
Problem solving under pressure, it's a whole different beast. And this isn't trying to sound all oh, people don't know. There's people in the civilian world that understand pressure that we couldn't as military. But there is a different flavor, especially in the Marine Corps infantry, with what our day job requires us to train for. The pressure that just gets laced into everything we do, because we understand the stakes are a lot higher for what it could become through deployments or whatever. That's a different type of pressure, I think. So with that, what are some of the blind spots you notice most with Marines dealing with that sort of pressure? And then how do you help them move maybe from reactive decisions to a real problem-solving mindset that's rooted in a purpose and a little bit more focused?
I mean, ultimately, I think from a tactical standpoint, and I think it's one thing that the course I teach at does very good is induce friction, uncertainty, cause stress, and just put individuals in an uncomfortable scenario to make them achieve a decision. And when individuals aren't able to do that, a lot of the things that we see um, are just individuals getting tunnel vision on specific things, whether it be not truly understanding the overall purpose of what they're tasked to do. And a lot of the times it's reminding them that they're more capable than they think about that all of the things that they have at their disposal that can help them achieve the problem of whatever they're facing. A lot of the times when it could be a simple thing is like, okay, you talked about fire support being a big thing that a lot of people don't understand. It's like, what do you have at your disposal that can get you out of this problem that you're facing? They're like, oh, well, I have 81s or I have this. And it's like, okay, well, maybe let's talk to those folks and see what they can do. But ultimately, just reorienting them on, okay, you can go. Reorienting them on the problem at hand, making sure that they truly understand the purpose. Because a lot of times, a guy will be staying with the tactical situation. It's like, okay, I have my mission. I think I understand it. Let's execute. And it's like, you truly understand what your mission and intent is. If you don't, then maybe we take a little bit longer in the planning process to focus before you depart. And by that, we have seen that they go from the narrow-minded to, okay, well, now I understand the bigger picture. I think I'm able to do X, Y, or Z now. And it's like, okay, well, that took maybe 2 extra minutes. Keep that same mindset when you're approaching. It doesn't have to be tactical, right? It can be anything. And it allows the individual to not get so narrow-minded and focus on smaller pieces of the pie, but try to think about the pie, if you will, from a holistic standpoint first.
Right. Yeah, man. You talking about that makes me think of, I'll throw out a cliche. I'm sorry. I'll throw out like an acronym, but I'll tell you what it means because it's helpful. So like we talk a lot about rock drills with where Myles and I come from. So for non-military people, that's a rehearsal of concepts. So before we go out on a mission, maybe everybody will get around either a map or a terrain model, and different small unit leaders might talk through their piece of what they understand the commander gave this certain order or mission, and everybody's going to come around and back brief their part. When it comes to problem solving, just to make it practical for maybe non-military people, a lot of what Myles is saying, I think, is really applicable for that of understanding the purpose of it, sure. But also, even if you think you have it understood, I think a lot of humility plays into, if you have the time to, let's just say, my dad was a contractor his whole life, worked construction. And he used to say, hey man, measure twice, cut once. So before you think you've solved the problem and you think you know what the measurement on that board should be, measure it again, make sure you have the measurement right. And that, you know the width of your saw blade. Is it like a 1/4 inch? Is it going to mess you up so it's not perfectly meshed together? All these little details. And it sounds like perfectionism, but why not strive for that? It's also part of the staff NCO creed. Like what, even if you know it's outside of your grasp, like the guys that Mile hangs with, that's what they embody is like, I might not be perfect, but man, I'm going to strive for it every day. And that mindset looks a lot like humility, to be honest. It's not arrogance, because the pros that are pretty darn near perfect on some of the stuff they do at times, they're the ones that turn to their friend and go like, hey, I saw this problem. This is how I'm thinking of solving it. We have a little space and time. Here's sort of like my rock back brief to you. And you don't necessarily owe that to some people sometimes, but it's probably pretty wise to look at a situation and go, before I make this decision and do something that I can't rewind, does this make sense to you? So have a trusted group, or maybe get a subordinate that doesn't know anything about it and be like, if I told you this, would this make sense to you? And if you're a leader, not even in the military, that's healthy sometimes. First of all, people are going to be like, whoa, you trust me with that? You're actually asking my input? I tell you what, try it sometimes and watch what it does for your culture. But also it helps you avoid some pretty nasty pitfalls and landmines at times too. So I love that mindset that you just painted of, hey, if you don't really understand your purpose, or even if you think you do, take a beat for a second and have some good friends you could phone, build some bridges, and then reach out to those because you're probably going to need them. So this one came from me just because, like I said, we're both married girl dads. So this is my question for you, having known you, and I think your insight would be useful. So has there been a moment, maybe with your wife, with your daughters, or maybe someone in uniform as well, when a creative or unexpected solution taught you something you didn't know you needed to learn? And what did that unlock inside of you? What did that look like? And I say that because my daughters do that to me all the time. So I just want to hear Myles' stories, man, because it humbles me all the time, man.
Yeah, I mean, these kids teach me more than I ever thought they would. Just to kind of preface this, my oldest daughter is the first female on my side of the family in like 26 years, I believe. So right off the gate, wasn't expecting to be a girl dad. Here we go. We got, a fire team minus of females inside of my house. So they're keeping me going. But I think yes, I can take it. One of the things that I truly didn't expect to happen that happened within, I would say, probably the last couple months was my kid's school was needing a track coach. And we'll call it what it is. Paige volunteered me to do it. It wasn't something that I was expecting to do, nor do I have any experience with track. So I try to take the little experiences that I had with running and the knowledge that I had with that. And mind you, like these kids are 1st through 8th graders. I think I had like 65 kiddos on my track team. And it was every day showing up, learning something new. I didn't realize that like I needed that billet, that job, whatever it might be. As we talked about, like my schedule's already busy enough. I would show up to those practices after already working 16 hours or whatever during that day, feel so defeated. And then those kids would just shed so much light throughout the rest of the day. And it's like, there's so much to the life that we don't truly see until we try to look at it through the lens of a different person. And like, that's what you get with these little kids. And it doesn't have to be a kid, right? It could be anyone. But yeah, I think that was definitely an experience that I didn't foresee ever being a part of. Like I learned so many things through those kids, and I learned so much stuff through these kids. It's truly amazing. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yeah, let's not jump on the couch, okay?
And I'm going to insert this, man. Like, I'm going to tell you this for the listeners. There's like, sure, maybe when your daughter ran behind you with her shirt off, you're only going to see that because I'm going to throw that on YouTube. I'm not dumb, but there's not a chance I would snip out or try to drown out the voices of your daughters in the background. Because when it comes to problem solving, I love your perspective and your patience, and that your kids are around and they feel comfortable and you feel comfortable and you aren't stressed out.
Yeah.
There's so much to be said about just like, some people might find this like, oh, this isn't a polished episode. This is a real episode to me. This is a dad who's a fantastic husband and father with his little girls who can't stay away from him. They come up giggling and daddy, help me take my ponytail out. Daddy this, daddy that. And he's just even keeled and he's comfortable in his skin and he loves his family. And man, when it comes to the people I want by my side, helping me solve tough problems, it is the type of person that can go, yeah, I want to see stuff through my daughter's eyes. I want to see a problem or life through that perspective because it broadens and deepens my experience. Or I want to show up when I'm dog tired to track and then let those kids give me life. Because I think when you experience those things, man, and when you really press into those moments, those things that seem like just distractions or seem like they're adding to the problem, when you really appreciate them, they give you life and they actually make those problems start to fall away and they give you a lot more clarity. And so if anything, to drive that point home, there's not a chance I'd be like, yo, man, why are your girls in the background? Because mine do it too sometimes. And I think it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's who I know you to be.
Just
And they're
life.
crazy.
Right here. We're solving the problem. It's not Blakefish.
That's right.
But yeah, there's so much you could truly learn from them. Like just yesterday, they had a craft that they wanted to do. We just the Ocean Fest was down at the San Clemente Pier, so we went to lay down there, hanging out. We're just covered in sunscreen. I'm like, okay, we need a shower at some point. That's always healthy, and we need to do we need to do this craft. Like, well, Dad, why don't we just do the craft and then we'll shower afterwards? Because we're gonna get messy from the craft anyway. And it's like, I didn't even think about that,
Perfect.
It's like, yeah, that's a great solution.
I always say this, but this is always for my wife and my daughter. So for Laura and Ari and Alessia and Karina, I love you. And I think it's really cool that your daughters were there. Hopefully this is something they can look back on and see, like, your dad invested in you girls. I know he loves you, Paige. I know your husband loves you so much. It's cool to leave this and have family a part of this conversation with the kids laughing in the background. Like, that's life to me, man. That's special. That is the purpose of everything we do. And I love that you show up. Like, that is who you are. And again, I'll say it, man, like, even doing this episode with me, someone could be like, my wife's gone. I got my girls. They'd view that as a problem. But you are such a rock star for the fact that you don't see things as a problem where other people would. You show up, you meet things head on, you view it as an opportunity, not as a barrier or a hindrance, and you just crush it. And I love you to death, man. I'm so proud of you and everything you're doing. And I'm really honored that you joined me for this. And for you Marines out there, keep that hunger. Myles is crushing it. And if you need something in the infantry community, if you're an enlisted guy, reach out to him. He's over at Unit Leaders Training Company on the West Coast at SOI West. Hit him and his cadre up. If you're on the West Coast and you don't know him, I'd be shocked already. But if you don't, hit this dude, look him up, and reach out to him. Gunnery Sergeant of Marines. Man, you've come a long way. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of this time we could spend together. Over to you for any last words.
Ultimately, I just want to say thank you, Josh. Complete honor and privilege to join you. I think you said it best, is like our personal relationship has been built on family, and there's no better way throughout all of the chaos to do this episode with you than to have all these little minions running around giving me the problems to try to figure out while we're live,
In stride, baby.
So thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Love you, man. Take care. And to each of you guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my reflections and stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.